talk, I want to ask Juergen Kuebler to come on stage. And this guy, I met him, and he just came from Japan, and he flew off to India, and then he came to America. He's been involved in the creation of 200 alliances all over the world. He knows when alliances go wrong, because it's really, the technology is easy, but the alliances are really difficult, especially if you have competitors talking to each other and getting in the same group. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in there, and he's going to basically share that experience. How do you make a successful ecosystem with blockchain, and how do you get all these people to talk to each other and to have a good governance system? So I'm really happy he's here in Amsterdam. He came from far. Give him a big hand, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Juergen.
Thank you. Well, nobody can compete with Vincent's suit, so I'm trying to do this a little bit with content. Yeah, I have the better socks. Ringmaster. All right. So again, thank you, Vincent, for having me, and it's exciting to be here. Again, my role in IBM is to help these consortia or these business networks to form, to really get the right governance, to form them fair and equitably, so you actually get this gravitational pull, along with monetization strategies and some tokenizations. I don't know, we have about 20 minutes to get into that. I will do a monologue for 15 minutes, and hopefully we'll have some animated discussions after that. But I thought I will give you not only some theoretical examples, but also give you some practical examples. Who of you in the room has heard about Food Trust or TradeLens from IBM? Well, quite a few. So it's about either global container trade or global food chain, securing the global food chain. Of course, here in the Netherlands, you have a lot of food producers too. And what could be more important than ensuring the safety of what we eat? Just go to the next. Oh, I think I have a clicker somewhere. Is this the clicker? Oh, this one.
There's a big green button.
Love the green button. All right. So I thought this is what we're going to talk about today. The 6 blockchain network guiding principles. Now, for those of you in the audience who expect me to point you to a GitHub directory and download all the secrets about blockchain and then be good, they will be terribly disappointed. Blockchain networks or consortia have to do with business, have to do with how you shape these things in the correct way, and I can certainly also talk about all the mistakes IBM has made along the way. The reason we have this experience today is because we have made a lot of mistakes. So we'll talk about different network models. Is every blockchain network the same? No, absolutely not. They differ greatly based on intent, based on who participates. We will talk about the creation process. There's a lot of work involved. The traditional time it has taken us to create some of these very large consortia is about 2.5 years. That seems to be the average duration. We have probably now shrunk it down to about a year. But for those of you who believe to download, as I said, a code package from GitHub and code a couple of lines of code and believe that you have now a global consortia, they're smoking the funny weeds. So this is not going to happen. And then we talk about monetization models. Very important. Also very interesting from another angle. You have now, for the first time, a tool in your hand, and blockchain is really only a tool to solve not only an economic problem, but also a socio-economic problem. I will talk about how you can address child labor, how you can address things that are really outside the realm of only economics. And that's where governments we work with globally have perked up and has given us a lot of attention, and we'll talk about that. So, I will talk about the 6 guiding principles very quickly. I believe that you have all access to the materials on this conference, so there's no need to photograph any slides. The fundamental underlying concept of all of the blockchain networks need to fulfill at least these 6 points. First of all, open. You need to make sure that the big ones, the mid-sized ones, the small ones, the advantaged ones, the disadvantaged ones, have a chance to participate in what you are doing. And I've met already on this conference a lot of interesting people who have a lot of great ideas. And when they talk to me and they basically use me as a sounding board as to, is this something worthwhile doing? This is the first question I ask, right? Do you design it for yourself? and for your suppliers and customers maybe, but not everybody else. If that's true, you have probably less chance of success. The next one is something where most people are utterly confused. They talk about private and public blockchains. The conversation we really need to have is permissioned or non-permissioned blockchains. You know, permissioned does not mean private blockchains. That doesn't mean that one entity like a Walmart or a large retailer or a large energy company doesn't do something for their own. It just means that the people that are on the network are known. And for a wide array of use cases, you need, for example, in the financial industries, you know, Bitcoin is, of course, as we all know, a non-permissioned blockchain, and everybody can do it. It's the Wild West. And it's secure, yes, but there are laws in this world, and there are laws in this country. They're called AML, right? Anti-money laundering cases, and ABN AMRO people. Are there any ABN AMRO people in the room? Thank you. And you know KYC, so you need to understand who is the person on this network when they're wire transferring money from A to B. So you need to have an environment where you can prove without a shadow of a doubt that Juergen Kuebler and the entity that claims to be Juergen Kuebler is actually Juergen Kuebler. And you know, you need to have a network and a technology that allows you to do that. Governance. If you design a network that is fair and equitable to the members on the network, even though you have the very large ones and the very small ones on there, you have a much better chance of making this a success. And you know, you need to have many different angles and many different validators on this network. And it is absolutely important that you give this network a set of rules and a set of rules to change the rules that is transparent and that everybody can follow. I'm not going to talk about common standards, that's a self-explanatory thing. What I will talk about is privacy. Blockchain does not guarantee security. Wide misconception, right? Garbage in, garbage out. If you put all kinds of garbage on a blockchain network, all you have achieved is that you have immutable garbage on a system, right? Privacy is paramount. You need technology that ensures the privacy of your data. The whole idea about blockchain fundamentally, when you think about it, is everybody has their core systems. And you all in this room, when you run core systems, you will continue to have those. Blockchain is just this unbelievably thin layer, as thin as possible, that creates that trusted layer and then allows you to have a secured access on only the subset of information that you need to create these new business models. And again, the sixth one, very close and dear to my heart, fair and democratic governance. You have now a chance to address inequalities in the process and in networks that exist today. You can take money out of certain parts of a supply chain and replace them with tokens because other people are disadvantaged and have not fair access on certain resources. So you have a chance of revolutionizing a lot of processes. We will talk later with Franz about the responsible sourcing aspect. You know, when people buy, like automotive manufacturers or electronic companies, they buy conflict minerals or cobalt that ends up in batteries. And you need to prove that they have been responsibly sourced. So you can solve a socioeconomic problem now with blockchain by taking money out of the equation. Now, let's talk about the different models. There is 4 different blockchain networks that have emerged. Let's talk about the red, the green, and the blue, and then the center one at the end. I talked before, when a company wants to create a blockchain network for themselves and their suppliers and customers, that's called a founder-led network. And it's geared towards business differentiation for themselves and their suppliers and customers. And the main goal is cost takeout. There's nothing wrong with creating a blockchain network like that. But the more interesting ones are, for example, the green ones. And we have other people in the room here with Leo Dijkstra who run, for example, a network that's driven in the utilities industry with Tenant, where you get companies that are utility companies get together, form this network, and they get together around a use case that helps all of them, right? So this is where a network of competitors come together, and you know, this is the conversation Vincent and I had. How does this even work, right? Because these people are competing. Why would they come together, risk an antitrust lawsuit, you know, and you know, for what benefits But the idea is, for example, let me give you the utility example. If you think about cybersecurity, if you have a situation in North America where you have about 40 utility companies, when one of them gets hacked, 29 don't gloat or 39 don't gloat because the same threat vector can affect them. So you get together to solve that problem. Or renewable energy credits. You need to solve that as an industry. You need to come together. Blockchain is ideally suited to do that. The blue models are the most interesting ones. This is where companies from different industries come together, banks, telco companies, automotive manufacturers, tier 1 suppliers, and create business models that just were not possible before, but now are because you have this blockchain trust layer. And then in the center is a model that we have come to after having tried in certain industries, all three of the other ones. There are use cases that require to create Switzerland, to create a neutral platform that's operated by one operator, and you invite then people onto this platform. It probably resembles most closely to a traditional software sale, just based on blockchain, but it has to be done that way simply because either for antitrust considerations or from non-existent regulatory grounds, you just cannot build a consortium the way you normally do. So you have to basically outsource that on a neutral platform. I call it the Switzerland model. And I call it the service provider network. Now, when you do either one of those four models, this and another 200 detailed slides behind this, which I'm not going to show now, are the business questions you need to tackle in order to build a blockchain network. You need to think about, who are my members? You need to think about, is this a non-for-profit organization? Is this a for-profit special purpose interest vehicle? Is this a service provider model? Is this a joint venture? What is my roadmap? What's my operational model? How do I solve a socioeconomic impact? What are the use cases and what is a business value design model I need to build so every member of the consortium understands how much do they invest and what's the value coming out of that blockchain network. What are the business dimensions? What are investment strategies? And so forth and so forth. Fundamentally, when you look at the process we deploy, is we create an MOU, a memorandum of understanding of all the members you initially want to invite, and agree in a non-legally binding manner what the cornerstones of this collaboration, of these networks, are all about. Once we have every early member sign that document, we then issue the consortium contract. And then as an amendment to the consortium contract, we define a consortium charter. It's a questionnaire of about 300 questions. Who owns IP? What happens if somebody joins? What are the responsibilities of a founding member? What are responsibilities of a normal member? What happens if somebody leaves? What if somebody wants to become a founding member? You need to pre-think the answers to these questions amongst the early founding members in expectation of creating that network you want to create in the future. Otherwise, it will not work. You will not create a network where you get the gravitational pull. Now, for those of you who heard about TradeLens, it's this international container shipping network. We started out with about 18% of all world containers on the network. We have now 50% of all worldwide containers on this network. So if you ship anywhere a container in the world, half of them are traced on TradeLens right now. And you only get there. At the beginning, we were Maersk and IBM. You think Hapag-Lloyd wants to join that one? No. Not if it's Maersk, IBM, something, right? But if you have a fair and democratic set of rules, and if you have the right governance structure, you find now ways that everybody equally benefits. And again, you need to solve for all these problems. And again, if people are more interested in what's behind that, they need to come talk to us, because we have probably made the most mistakes of anybody in the market, and therefore know probably a lot more than most of the people in the market. Now, I'll give you that example of TradeLens, because I promised Vincent I'll give you a real example. This is the top 30 companies in the world that ship containers. There's 120 million containers in the world. They're 40 foot long, sometimes 45 and 50 foot long. They're 8 foot high and 8 foot wide. mostly manufactured in China. And you see APM Maersk is the world market leader with 18.9%. Now, when you really look at this and you think about market sizing, the top 1 company has 20% of the world market, if that's the problem you want to address. The top 4 companies have about half, and the top 10 about 80% of the market, right? So when you design this network of global container shipping, you need to really think about who are you talking to, and it doesn't make always sense to talk to the biggest first. Sometimes it makes sense to talk to number 3 and the number 5 first, and then have the number 1 call you, right? You need to really think about this. Don't start coding before you solve the business problems, right? So we have now number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 10, and a couple other ones, a couple of smaller ones. And I cannot talk about the ones that are in negotiation right now. So this is the first consideration. The next consideration is it only ocean shippers? No, it's not. Because guess what? When these containers come from a farmer or from an exporter, right, they get registered there. You need supply chain people, you need insurers, you need banks for trade finance, you need freight forwarders, you need ports and terminals, you need customs agencies, and so forth and so forth. And then what you do, and this is what we call an industry circle, for all the apps you initially introduce on this network, you need to find who is connected to whom. What business problem are you solving? And then you can start coding, right? So, and as you can see, these software applications don't connect all the players to all the other ones at the beginning. You need to be open and transparent about that, how you start and how you progress. And again, are all of these members equal? No, they're not. You will find yourself in a position that certain members are paying for the services, and certain others, they're not, right? They bring unit of measures to your network like containers. And, this needs to be clearly planned. Democratization, equality within a member type is absolutely critically important. So you need to treat all ocean carriers the same, all customs brokers the same. You can treat customs brokers differently from ocean carriers, but not within a member type. Then you need to talk about monetization, and I'm already running out of time. This is a very simplistic way of showcasing what a global supply chain looks like. Every container that is shipped on the ocean has about 200 pieces of paper accompanying them. Global trade grows at about 4% every year, and it was on a route to grow 3% and 2%, and when that happens, people start to get hungry, right? So you want to avoid that at all costs. What you need to do then is, if you give people insight on where the container is, do you have them pay by degree of insight? So do they see everything from the port to the other port, or do they see something from the exporter to the importer? The prices are different. Transactional pricing is another way you can do it, or you can do it by module. Now, 15 minutes is of course not enough time to really talk about this, but I have certainly touched on all the important issues, and I hopefully have given us enough time to answer some questions.
Okay. Well, it sounds like an impossible task. Well, let's start with the first one. How did you avoid that Maersk dominated the trade lanes network and basically destroyed it for everybody else? How did you avoid that?
Well, at the beginning we did not, right? We made a mistake. We announced an IBM Maersk trade, or what did we announce? The joint venture. This is why you give this a new co. You form a new corporation. You call it Trade Lens. Mm-hmm. You basically make sure and you convince the other players that, of course, are also very large, that this is not a Maersk network or an IBM network, but it's a network for everybody. And
so 2 was really
governance.
That was not enough to start with. I mean,
we didn't do enough.
You should have 5 or 6 people that everybody felt secure and safe, and that it wasn't the dominant little Maersk IBM show.
That would have been one way, or the other way would have been that we would have been very clear at the rules of the governance and the monetization, how they work, and we were not.
So how did you change that then? I mean, that was a mistake, but you're still at 50%. That's pretty good for a bunch of blocks moving around the world.
It's pretty good. Yeah. And there's a lot of transactions going through the system.
How many? How many a month?
I'm tempted to say...
Is it 1,000? Is it 10,000? 100,000? How many?
No.
What kind of idea?
It's like 400 million.
Yeah, see, I just want to get an
Yeah.
idea. You don't have to be... So 400 million is pretty good, huh? Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Okay, so it's serious.
Yeah.
It's not. It's
No,
not
this is very serious. So,
Okay.
as in every design-build situation, it takes you 10 times more effort to correct something,
Yeah.
as if you would have designed it right from the beginning and without going into too much detail. It was a lot of work.
Okay. So immediately here somebody says, we want multiple trade lens network that will compete. That's
Yeah.
bored.
Yeah, and you know, there is a competing network out there
Oh.
that has a couple other ones of the ocean carriers.
Which one? Is that the liver or something?
That's a different angle. No, it's not. No, it's not
Okay.
that. But again, I don't expect that TradeLens will be the only one. There will be multiple ones, and you know, when we've built ours on Hyperledger Fabric, and it has the integration and the collaboration components in there, so we fully expect that we then collaborate with the other networks.
Yeah. So mask cannot dominate the network.
No.
What about IBM technology? Because I mean, you're not
Yeah.
only doing technology, you're also putting that. You're being the psychologist of the ecosystem, and making all these container boys and women work together. I mean, aren't you a little bit too dominant?
No, and here's why. So I told you we base our networks on Hyperledger Fabric. This is something we have started initiating probably 6 years ago. We have we've donated the entire code to the Hyperledger Fabric project under the Linux Foundation. So this is all open source code.
Yeah, I know.
We don't own this. Certainly, we as IBM are in a very unique position to be able to have a lot of connections and, you know, ask a lot of people to join something we initiate or convene. But we're an operator of this network.
Oh, wait, really? There's now multiple operators now also?
No, not
Okay.
at this point
No,
in time.
sorry, I was saying, yeah.
But people can host it on Amazon or Azure if they want to.
Sure. I have to ask, because you started. I mean, somebody wanted to know.
I can send you a pair if you want me to.
No, I don't know. It's bot 1157 and
You
want
know,
to know.
the honest story is,
Oh.
I had a CEO of a company who I gave a very contentious presentation to, and they asked a lot of hard questions. And at the end, he gave me those socks.
Okay, good. So you
So
cannot,
I don't know.
Sorry, you cannot buy them.
I don't
Okay.
know.
Then
He
here,
bought them somewhere.
that slide, that network model slide, it sounds like completely impossible. It was like you didn't even have the hundreds of slides. I mean, is this different from a normal IT project, or is it?
It is very much like a management consulting or a network building exercise, which people have done for hundreds of years in different forms. You just need to follow a certain set of rules. We have assembled our version of it because we have made so many mistakes, so we kind of kept track every time we took a wrong turn, and hopefully are now in a position to make this much more effective.
Okay. And if you look at the cost of the technology versus the cost of having all these people talk to each other. We're from Holland, okay? We talk each other to death before we do something. And it's really, normally the cost of talking is more than the cost of doing what we actually need doing.
It's 1 to 10.
1 to 10?
Yeah.
The talking is...
No.
What is the most...
You said the cost
Yeah.
of organizing
Yeah.
blockchain alliances ecosystems.
Yeah. 10% for the
hold on.
talking or 10% for the...
No, I misspoke. What I meant is the effort to kind of implement the system in comparison to what the technology actually costs you is about 1 to 10. Now, the organization...
So what is the most expensive, the technology or the implementation cost?
It's the implementation.
The implementation is the
most
technology and the
expensive one.
is still the most expensive.
Yeah.
So the talking is only 10%. Okay, so
Talking is not that hard. Because you either agree or not.
okay, alrighty. So that is.
And again, this has nothing to do with IBM.
No. That we know. That
if you
we
run
know.
an SAP system and you need to integrate it, that's what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
Who does it doesn't matter.
Okay.
You have a lot
Then
of
last
questions.
question. Well, I don't have questions. These are people.
2 to 4. 2 to 4.
Okay, that's a
That's your
short and
answer.
concise answer. So the answer to the question about consortia is 2 to 4, and I want to thank you very much, Juergen, for coming here. So I appreciate it.